Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. Eagles, Giants, Lincoln Financial Field, Saturday night, under the lights, 8:15. Let's go. Honestly, I'm not worried at all. I just want to get there and go play. All right, the blood is boiling, and I want to go see some football. It's time. It's time to go win a playoff game, and I think it's cute that the Giants are smelling themselves after a win in Minnesota. This was supposed to happen. One of the most obvious losses of the weekend was going to be Minnesota. Very fraudulent. You look at the point differential compared to what their record was. It didn't make much sense. Kirk Cousins, come on now. We know about the history of what Kirk Cousins does when it comes to big games. That was going to play out all weekend long. For the most part, you can maybe have a coin flip with whatever the Chargers in Jacksonville was with the 27-0 lead and the big blow by LA because you got no idea what Staley is doing. The teams that were supposed to won. The better teams won. Now, was it as pretty as some of these teams probably projected it to be? No. I'm sure the Bills didn't expect Miami to have a shot there, and the brutal time management by McDaniel. There was a lot of sloppy coaching throughout this weekend, but I don't anticipate Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen to have that. I have concerns on Jonathan Gannon, but within those concerns, there's been a lot of dominance from this front. There's been a lot of dominance from a lot of players on this defense. So with that said, for the things that scare me, there's still a lot of explosiveness and a lot of unbelievable play from a guy like Hassan Reddick or Brandon Graham, or, you pick up Joseph and Sue, and they had a job to do with the run game. Oh, what's that? Saquon Barkley can run? Well, we'll find out. Daniel Jones made some plays with his legs, but if you stop Saquon Barkley, and then you say, okay, Daniel Jones, beat me with your legs, and that's their way of winning the game because I don't think they have many skill position players that are going to wow you to death. You got Darius Slayton dropping balls wide open over the middle. That could have been a big-time play, but instead, Minnesota gets another chance. Those details matter. Now, Minnesota blows, and that's the difference. But I don't anticipate the Eagles shooting themselves in the foot, allowing the Giants to come into their building and take it. The spread opened up at 7.5, 8.5 at some places. That's a decent line telling you something. And I value that. If it was 4, if it was 4.5, if it was 5, well, then now you should be a little bit more concerned. But that's not the case. So my point is, look, I don't know exactly how it's going to look because if we base it off of the crazy bonkers weekend we just saw, it might not be as pretty. There might be some uncomfortable spots. Cincinnati was a bit uncomfortable against the Ravens without Lamar Jackson, and they had that crazy play at the goal line, and they run it all the way back for a touchdown. But at the end of the day, the better teams won. Like I said, except for the coin flip of whatever you want to call Jacksonville, even the 49ers, a little bit of nerves from the quarterback in the beginning. Then they settle in. And then they smack the Seahawks the way that they should. The only way I see this team losing, the Eagles that is if they don't play the way that they're capable of playing. And I don't see the Giants having enough to force them into a position where that's the case. So basically I'm saying the only team that could beat the Eagles are themselves in this matchup. It's a nice matchup for the Birds. And it's funny because Giants fans think they figured something out due to that Week 18 game. You didn't figure anything out. Our coaching staff, looking ahead, thought, well, there's a chance we might actually see the Giants again. Let's not do anything crazy. Let's keep it super vanilla. Let Jalen Hurts throw the football around. And speaking of the quarterback, last week, you got some Eagles fans all upset because he didn't practice one day. Neither did A.J. Brown, by the way. The following practice, he's throwing the football. He'll be all right. This is what you benefit from when you have a bye week and you win 14 games. This is what happens. Lane Johnson's practicing. Apparently, the original diagnosis of what was being reported isn't necessarily what's happening. I saw him practice. I'm seeing him move, and I'm like, hey, I feel better about that situation. Now, it's not the same as another team and another opponent who knows that Lane Johnson is dealing with something, going at him full speed in a postseason atmosphere. I'm aware of that. But for the longest time, I thought he tried to give it a go, and then eventually Jack Driscoll has to get in there. And maybe that still ends up happening. But I feel more confident in a higher percentage that Lane Johnson can actually do what he's supposed to do. And I didn't feel that way prior. Look, Dexter Lawrence, good player. We know what they have in the run game, and the quarterback seemed to play one of his best games, and, good for him. It's a different beast, though. This isn't the Minnesota Vikings. It wasn't just the fact that, it's the sexy pick. Everyone's following the trend. That's what you always hear when people pick the Giants all week long. Oh, it's the sexy trend pick. No, there's a reason why. Spreads tell you something. Minnesota, with all those wins, with the record they had, were at home in the playoffs. And if you don't know much about the betting world, a 3-point line is basically even. If you're at home and you're -3 and the other team is +3, that's basically saying the home field advantage is worth those 3 points. At that point, you guys are even. Well, how are the Vikings -3 at home in the playoffs with their record against the stinking New York Giants? Vegas was telling you that this is even. So it made a lot of sense that the Giants could win that football game. Looking at over a touchdown favorite in a postseason matchup is a wild separation. I'm chilling, basically, is my point. I'm just waiting. I'm not nervous. I love this matchup. There's some fans here that might convince themselves, I don't know. Well, why? Why? The Eagles are significantly better than the Giants. They have way more talent. We know they lack in the passing game. The Giants, that is. Well, do you want to talk about A.J. Brown? You want to talk about what Devontae Smith can do? Dallas Goedert? An opportunity for him to thrive? And as great as Saquon Barkley is, with the threat of Jalen Hurts, and you didn't see him run the same way you will see him run this week. You didn't see him run in the last week on purpose. Come on. You think that this team automatically forgot how to execute in the red zone? Or there was a reason why they weren't executing at the same rate in the red zone? They weren't playing it out the same way. Yeah, but with Gardner Minshew, the coaching staff didn't call a good game. In the last game, the coaching staff didn't call a good game. It's the postseason. They're going to call a completely different game than what you saw the final frame of the year. You're going to see execution different. Gardner Minshew was the problem with Gardner Minshew in that game. Like, people are mad. Whoa, Sirianni didn't run the ball up. The quarterback sucked. There were throws to be made all over the field. That was the bigger issue. And all these games, like the Colts game, for example, and the Bears game, for example, questions within the game plan. At that time against Indianapolis, Dallas Goedert got hurt. And they force-fed some of the heavy tight end stuff. And you're like, well, that's a little bit weird, right? You lose one of the best tight ends in football, but you still kind of force a similar game plan as if you still have this plethora of great tight ends to choose from. It was a bit weird. They won the football game. Why? Because the quarterback in the fourth quarter put the team on his back and said, let's go win a ball game. On the road, may I add. The game against Chicago, it's cold. Why are they throwing so much? Go back and look at how many yards the wide receivers had in that game. And we'll do that right now. It might have not have been my most preferred game plan, but the thought of attacking in the air wasn't completely off. If A.J. Brown is getting 181 1 yards. If Devontae Smith is getting 126 yards. So maybe not my preferred way to go about it. They won the football game, and you have 2 wide receivers going for over 300 yards in the passing game. These guys aren't dumb. They didn't just forget how to coach in the last couple of weeks. Whether you like to admit it or not, there's human nature that plays a role too. It's a long season. You're beat up. You're ready for the playoffs. You know you got 3 games to solidify that top seed in the NFC. Complacency to a level just kicks in because we're humans and we can't control that. And that's not just on the field and the players. It's the coaching staff too. Hey, maybe we can get by. Like, it is what it is. It might bother you, but it's reality. And everything that happened in Week 18, go back to Week 18 for some of these teams that just competed this weekend. Did it have anything to do with what you saw on the field? I'll answer the question for you. No. What Cincinnati did Week 18, what Miami did Week 18, what the Jags did Week 18, what the Chargers did Week 18, what Seattle did Week 18. There's zero relevance once you get to this point. So if you are nervous, figure it out. Because at this time of the year, if you got the better team and you control the controllables and you do what you're supposed to do, you'll be all right. And I expect this team to be all right. Daniel Jones had a nice game. Minnesota, it's not like coming to Philadelphia. And there's some familiarity. I don't know why that was difficult. Between these two teams. It goes both ways. Oh, yeah, but they know what the Eagles want to do. We know what the Giants like to do. And that's when it comes to the coaching staff to get cute and to maybe switch things up a tad. Oh, they've seen this formation a bunch? And this formation normally dictates something else? Maybe we can run something off of it. Or in the first quarter, we run the same play we always do in that formation, but the second quarter, there's going to be a different element. I don't know. You know why I feel this great too? Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts. I believe in him so much. I know the Chargers have a man named Justin Herbert, so I'm not downplaying what I think his skill set provides. But Trevor Lawrence was ridiculous in that second half to not give up all that adversity, all those interceptions. Asante Samuel Jr. is out there catching every single pass, it seemed. Ball's getting deflected at the line of scrimmage. Guys are making plays. But at the end of the day, Trevor Lawrence made big plays and kept attacking and chipping away. I believe in Jalen Hurts to make big plays when needed, when necessary. I think you forget, because of the injury and the shoulder, what he was capable of doing. And that last game isn't what you're going to see. And I feel very comfortable saying that. And I feel great about Lane. And James Bradbury with the revenge game. I know the Giants fans think, hey, this is great. Feeling themselves. We can do this. Dable's a good coach. It ends here for the Giants. My initial reaction was, it's a good matchup for your Eagles. Could have been Dallas, could have been Tampa, and I'd be saying the same thing about Dallas and the same thing against Tampa, even though there is a Tom Brady factor, which would be after a win, which is always a bit concerning. Just because it's Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback to ever play, even as piss poor as you want to look at that Tampa team and think to yourself, they're not the same team. It's Tom Brady. You never, never, never know. Outside of Seattle, this was my choice. If I could have chose who I wanted to see, Seattle, then New York, then whatever team would have won on Monday Night Football. Because there's a reason why they were playing on Wild Card Weekend. There's a reason why they finished third in the division. They went through peaks and valleys, this Giants team. They went through some highs, then they went through some lows, and now they're kind of getting back up again because, well, they won a playoff game on the road. You have a team waiting, a well-rested team. You just went through the trenches. Well, one team's waiting at home saying, bring it on. I can't wait to continue this conversation throughout the week. It's going to be a lot of fun. But, all right, texts, calls. Let's rock with Sean, one of our great callers. Let's hear what he has to say.
Look, let me preface this by saying congratulations to the Giants. I mean, Minnesota is a notorious choke artist, but going into Minnesota and winning that game, coming from 7-0 down with the opening drive and then responding immediately, kudos to the Giants. Kudos to Dayball. Kudos to Wink Martindale. That said, of the teams that were left in the NFC playoffs that the Eagles could have matched up against, I think the Giants is our best matchup. I think their offense is very average. I mean, especially with the skilled receivers on the outside. I don't see any reason why Slay and Bradbury can't cover those guys. Basically, if you shut down Saquon Barkley, the Eagles should win this game. You know, I'm not saying they're going to beat the Giants by 30 or anything like that. It's a division game. These two teams know each other. There's no secrets. But I honestly would rather face the Giants than Dallas, Tampa Bay, or even Seattle, who we never beat.
Nah, see, I don't compare the old Seattle teams with this Seattle team. Yeah, there's been, in years past, a definite struggle against Seattle. I still would have liked to seen Seattle over the Giants, but both, I think, are a favorable matchup. I love you, Sean, but there's one thing I'm going to kind of push back on, and that's the fact that I don't care about the kudos to the Giants. I might have even said nice little win over the first 18 minutes here, but at the end of the day, it's less to me about the Giants. And it's more to me about how we all knew that Minnesota just wasn't that good. It was two teams in the same tier. So let me get this straight. Minnesota, with all those wins, not really in that tier that their record gave them, or that their record put them in the position to be in. Right underneath San Francisco, that's where they have themselves with that record, right underneath San Francisco. They're more like a wild card New York Giants than they were all those wins. Two teams in the same tier battled it out. One team, known choke artist. The other team on the uprise with their rebuild and the coaching staff. I look at it more as, all right, for Vikings, you are who we thought you were. The Giants did do well. Cool. The bigger story is, the hell are the Vikings? They're a mess. They're a joke. And there's a reason why they got all the hate and the disrespect all season long. Because the eye test was obvious. It didn't pass the smell test throughout the entire season. And we saw it play out on full display. Anyway, I think they know the emphasis. Jonathan Gannon, if he doesn't see that Saquon Barkley is part of their motor, well, then we got bigger issues. But I think he recognizes that. Make them one-dimensional. If Daniel Jones has to beat you with his arm with these skill players, and then sometimes the usage of his legs, and you eliminate a Saquon Barkley, the Eagles win this football game. Sometimes you can do everything right, and there's a back-breaking run for 15 yards. It moves the chains. The secondary was in great position. They played great coverage. You got some decent pressure, which forced Daniel Jones out of the pocket, and then it is what it is. Like, something happens, good cut, and then they move the sticks a little bit. That stuff happens, but you're not going to beat a team with that. And you got a mean front on the defensive side. Statistically speaking, one of the best. One of the most intense. I think you're right on with the Barkley effect. Force it to be hell for him. Make it a struggle for him. Don't let him get established. And then dare Daniel Jones to beat you. And they have the personnel to do that. The question becomes, does Gannon allow some of these weapons, or some of their skill position players, I should say, because I don't think they're necessarily weapons, to have 5-10 yards of separation and wide open field? Because Daniel Jones can complete that. Andy Dalton can complete that. Derek Carr, we've seen in the past, complete that. So, I think this is a Gannon game. Of course, the offensive game plans and Hurts and all that needs to play well, Lane Johnson, but, a big part of this is I think this team I have trust in that offensive side. I have belief in that offensive side. To me, the difference in where this team goes is what version of Jonathan Gannon do we get? Because I think that's kind of what I think would be the downfall. And once again, that's a controllable. The Eagles go as far as the Eagles play themselves. Gannon has the personnel to do this right. If he plays soft and allows teams to pick him apart and gives them plenty of space to make plays, well, that's on the Eagles. The Giants or whoever it would be at that point is taking what the other team is giving them. But once again, that's the Eagles giving them that. The Eagles are in the driver's seat. Will they push the right buttons, though? Well, that's the question. And I think they will. All right, some text messages. Josh says, be afraid of Saquon and Daniel Jones, all caps. Dable is a master, and he's going to outcoach Sirianni. Have you seen the recent games from him and Steichen? Trash. All that talk about Gannon? Fear the blue. All right, so Josh must be a Giants fan. Dable is a master. I like Dable. If he wasn't coaching the Giants and he was in the AFC and he was on a different team, I'd like him a lot more. I think he's trending this team in the right direction. Clearly. They just won a damn playoff game on the road with Daniel Jones, who I still think is in the mediocre range. I'm not as concerned as the recent games from Sirianni and Steichen. One, your quarterback played like the worst quarterback in the history of football. It's hard, for me personally, to rip the coaching staff as much as everybody else is. You could have put your quarterback in a better position, which is the job of the coach. If you had a below-average quarterback playing that day, you win that football game against the Saints. You needed 2 touchdowns. That's it. 2. If you can't get 2 touchdowns from your backup quarterback, 14 points, that's not a lot. You don't win many games with 14 points. You could have won that game with 14 points. I think what happens is we see how bad the backup's playing. Incompetent level. He could play way better. We've seen it the week before against Dallas. We don't even think twice about what Sirianni did. You go, hey, the backup quarterback did his job. He made the plays he was supposed to make. Just wait. I'd be stunned, floored, if on Saturday night we're discussing how dumb Sirianni and Steichen are as a duo. Connie How worried are you about facing a team 3 times in a season? The Giants know what the Eagles want to do and also what they want to run. Can that be what forces an Eagles loss? I said this a little bit earlier. Obviously, this text message came in before I started the shows. We know their tendencies. We know their beliefs. We know their concepts. Cincinnati played the Ravens again. Teams see each other a lot. The team that wins 2 of those games, think about how hard it is to sweep a team in the regular season. Now, you might say, well, exactly, Broads. That's why it's even more difficult to get that 3rd win. Well, I'll spin it to you this way. If you're winning that game twice, and we're aware of what happened in that second game. They played their backups. They sat their guys because that's the right thing to do. The Chargers felt the need to play their guys, and now Mike Williams gets hurt, which is a huge loss for a postseason game. That's a fireable offense in its own right, let alone losing a 27-0 lead. Anyway, if you're winning both of those games, and the Eagles for a while now has been taking care of business against the Giants, there's a reason why. It's not just luck. You're beating this team because you have way more talent. So if you see each other for a 3rd time, once again, I know this second game this season has a lot of context surrounding it. But just in general, it's hard to beat a team a 3rd time. Well, if you're beating them twice in normal circumstances, there's something to that in my eyes that we just can't overlook. And also, when this team played each other, what was the date? December 11th? 48-22. 48-22. Sanders had 144 yards and 2 tutties. Boston Scott's an automatic. We know that. A.J. Brown, 70 yards, light work. Devontae Smith, 64 yards, light work. Jalen Hurts, 2 tutties, 21 of 31, 217 yards. The Eagles are ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's why they're going to win on Saturday night. And then we're moving on to the NFC Championship game. We have all week to talk about it. But this is my initial thoughts on the matchup. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me. I'll catch you guys on the next one.